You are live. Okay, so here we are. Bria is here with us. It's actually been a long time coming. Hi, Bria.
Hi, Nick. Hi, everyone.
Bria, I must actually apologize to you because we had actually invited you on and then can't remember what happened. I don't know if it was the Gabby Petito case, but something kind of just got in the way, of what was supposed to be the next thing. But yeah, we are at last.
Yep, here we are at last. A whole year. It's been a year.
Yeah, can you believe it? Can you believe it?
I can't believe it's been a year.
Okay, so Mary O'Connor, Catherine McClure, good to see you, Kitty Woody. This is a bit of a different time. It's not quite the usual slot, but hopefully, some of you will catch me or catch us. I guess if you're not listening live. So in this live stream, we're going to just kind of review some of the details of what happened to Summer Wells, and then kind of discuss a couple of curveballs. Like there are a couple of things that, in a weird way, seem to throw our knowledge of the case upside down. So we're going to kind of look at that. Bria, you seem to be a real student of the case. You seem to have paid a lot of attention to it. Is that recently or throughout the year? Has it been sort of up and down?
Well, I think that it has been a little up and down. I mean, I was interested in this case. I mean, first of all, just that I don't believe that people, especially 5-year-old children, just poof, vanish and just go missing. I always thought that there were a lot of holes in the story. It didn't make sense. I was always wondering if Summer could actually swim. And then as the months went on and it was revealed that she couldn't swim. So I did keep up with it. I did also, keep up with the interview room and some of the work that they've done on that, having some guests, some family members. There was a lot of YouTube videos and a lot of information that kind of came out. And I did try to keep up with it. Yeah.
It's quite amazing how this case sort of evolved. It sort of started off in a sort of step-by-step way. So it sort of started off with Don talking. Remember, in the beginning, Don spoke and nobody else did. I mean, one of the very first interviews we saw was Don talking and his son sort of looking down at the ground next to him. And you sort of wondered, what's up with that? And then it was like 2 weeks later, Candace eventually spoke, but at Don's side, it wasn't like she spoke kind of independently. And even then, I think you could say that Don spoke more than she did, and Candace kind of seemed a bit odd to us. The first time we saw her, we kind of thought, and you remember what Ali said about Candace in terms of like when Alison Harris was asked, what did you think about when Candace broke her silence? Remember what she said?
She thought that she was stoned or high, I think. She appeared to, and she did appear to be, so, which seems nothing new.
I think you, at that time, we didn't really know these people very well. And so you could be forgiven for saying either that, how would you know whether she looked stoned or high, or no, she didn't look stoned or high, she just was whatever. But now that a lot of time has gone by, there have been kind of incidents where, so this is the other side, is the way social media evolved during the Summer Wells case. Something that I thought was quite amazing was the case kind of went from the mainstream media, if you remember. So it's sort of like Don giving interviews to the mainstream media, Candace doing the same thing. Then it went kind of onto their social media, where they kind of were like, we're going to stop talking to you guys, the media, and we're going to start kind of appearing at church vigils, and we're gonna say things on Facebook, kind of thing. And then and then that also changed where I think Don just stopped doing that, and Candace also stopped doing it. I can't remember if they deleted their pages or whatever. But then it kind of gradually went from Facebook onto YouTube, and now Don and Candace have got their own YouTube channels. And then from then on, it kind of became a circus. It was like in other cases like Barry Morphew and Letitia Stork and Gabby Petito and so on, you sort of felt like there was a limit to the amount of content. With this case, it was like when they started, I'm talking about Don and Candace, when they started sort of giving interviews to other YouTube channels, it was like happening constantly. And it just became this cacophony of something that was almost like nonsense. Do you remember that? Because like in the beginning you kept up with it, but later on it was like,
totally.
You know, right. It's, what is this, you know?
Right. And I think that a lot of that too had to do with their substance abuse issues really coming to light. I mean, we have to remember that some of those lives and interviews that they were giving and some of the phone calls and what have you that they were having with other people they were drunk and intoxicated, and it really did. It was a whirlwind at some point.
Well, I actually listened to one that I'd never heard before in the last day or so, where Don said something like, I've got 7 alibis. And then you could actually hear him. I think he thought the live had stopped. And then you could actually hear him cursing and doing other things. And like, so there was like that kind of thing where things are going on with these people that you didn't even know about because there's so much of it going on, you know. I mean, when I looked at Don Wells's YouTube channel, I was like, wow. So there's quite a lot of content I haven't even seen. I didn't even know it was here, just because it was this like bubbling of content that sort of didn't stop, you know. And I just think that it made me think, is this the future of true crime, where social media starts to, I don't know, intrude in a way? So we've seen it in the Johnny Depp case, but in the Summer Wells case, it seems quite like it's created this murkiness where, you know what I mean? Where there's been so much chatter that it's hard to know where to put the crime scene tape around all the statements that have ever been made. It's like, wow, you know.
It is. I mean, absolutely. There's just so much stuff out there. And then there's just a never-ending pool of just people who can make anything that they really want out of it, can say anything or influence others, let's say, as well, to thinking anything you want, believing anything you want. It's like a rabbit hole.
Absolutely. So someone called Ms. Justice says Starlink in inverted with an exclamation mark. I think some people are saying Don's 7 alibis are all related to Starlink. Mary O'Connor says, hi, Nick. Pauline Buckle says, when Dr. Phil gets involved, then you know it's a circus sideshow.
Totally.
Yeah. What's quite interesting so far is I went onto Candace's YouTube page. Remember, she's not in jail. She's not in prison. So you kind of wonder, I mean, I could say right now that she hasn't put anything up, and then 5 minutes later she might put something up. But right now she hasn't put anything up. It seems like the only statement that has been made so far has been Don, and has been made from prison, right? And he seems to kind of be making the case that, it's the last video that I put up, that she is still around, that she's still alive.
Right. And that narrative kind of keeps changing and shifting. And we could be honest and say that Don, at least, has, in my opinion, kind of he just changes his narrative to kind of fit what kind of would better suit him at that particular moment, and he could change it. We have to also remember that I mean, Yvonne Phillips, she actually just wrote this in the comments saying that at first, Don said that they had hoped that social media would help them. And he seemed very eager to be jumping on these channels. And well, we know that he didn't actually fulfill his interview with Chris McDonough in the interview room. But originally and earlier on, he seemed, you know, pretty gung-ho that they would be able to get their story out there and that the social media would just help them. And very soon after, he, you know, hated the Chris McDonough. He thought he, you know, we all heard all the horrible things that he had said about him, and how big of a lie, these were all lies now, and all this other stuff. So he kind of shifts and shapes his narrative to constantly.
If you think about the characters in the story, Candace in the beginning was sort of unavailable or absent in the beginning. Remember, like the first couple of weeks. And then there was also a period later on where she was, to some extent, absent. She would appear at the prayer vigils, but she wouldn't say anything. She wouldn't even pray. And she would also kind of be in the background when Don gave YouTube interviews. You could sort of see her there. She didn't really say very much. Then you had Grandma doing the same thing. Grandma kind of disappeared. She kind of went somewhere for a couple of months. And then there was a weird sort of, I don't know if you remember it, a sort of a thing where a YouTube channel said that she'd broken her silence and she'd apparently said something, but she hadn't given her permission, and a YouTube channel, I think, had pretended to be someone or not said everything about what was going on, and Grandma wasn't very happy about that, but nevertheless, Grandma said certain things, including about Don, in that. I suppose you could say, well, who knows for sure whether that was Grandma or not, but it was quite interesting what was said. And then Grandma did make a statement when she spoke to the mainstream media, and then that also created a kind of backlash where Grandma gave her version of events, and there was also a little bit of a problem there. Then the boys were there, although they were around, nobody ever got to sort of speak to them. And then the boys got taken, and they've still been taken. I'm just trying to think. And then, yeah, I mean, it's quite weird. Macbeth, he made an appearance. He was sort of also kind of held back a little bit. And then apparently, you know, he sort of came forward, but then he's disappeared again. We've never really heard from him again, or have we? Has he ever come back again? And yeah.
I've never heard anything personally.
Yeah, Alison,
not a word.
Alison said whatever she said, and then nothing again after that. And so you kind of wonder why, you know.
Right. Yes, and not only just the main characters in this, but the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, the TBI, has been extremely tight-lipped. They have, I mean, made minimal statements, and of which that they've kind of just said, yeah, no, you know, don't have any leads, have no information, sorry. I mean, nothing useful either, unfortunately.
Yeah.
With all due
I wonder whether, I wonder whether their strategy was like, if we just bide our time, someone's going to throw someone else under the bus sooner or later. Someone's going to drink too much or do whatever and then lose their temper, and they're going to have a bone to pick with someone, and all we've got to do is wait for that moment. It's guaranteed. And I don't know whether that was their strategy, but if it was their strategy, it's kind of like they're off the hook. In other words, TBI are off the hook. We don't have to investigate. Right. We don't have to do anything. All we've got to do is wait to be presented with the solution on a silver platter. And I don't know if that was their strategy, but it kind of feels like it was, and it kind of feels like, how can I put it? At the time, because I mean, I think a lot of people thought this isn't going to be a very complicated case. It's definitely not going to go on for very long. Summer's going to be found very soon, and people are going to go to jail very soon. And I don't think we expect it to be a year later. No idea where Summer is. Some idea of what may have happened to her, but also like no charges, kind of thing. And it does seem like they were almost hoping for a, how can I put it, hoping for a break, you know.
Right. Do you
hoping
say that?
For, yeah.
Do you say that because also Dawn has since been arrested on unrelated charges, and maybe that was a part of their play to, do you think that Dawn was arrested on unrelated charges, but the TBI was maybe hoping that they could get him out of the situation at that point and see what happened from there? Or do you just think that that was like random?
Well, I definitely think, I remember there was a time where a reporter asked, I think the sheriff, and said something like, do you think, I think the question went something like this: do you think the father's criminal history or criminal backstory is relevant?
Yeah.
And what was quite interesting was the sheriff had sort of said, no, he wasn't offering anything. But with that question, he was like, yes. He didn't say any more than that, but just said yes. And what had kind of happened was Don had gotten into a couple of legal scrapes until quite recently. And I think that was the other side in terms of law enforcement. I think it was like, if someone doesn't throw him under the bus, he may throw himself under the bus, kind of thing, you know.
Right.
And that does appear to be what happened. But what I don't understand is, like, with the last photo and with all the inconsistencies, how can you say you don't have kind of enough to sort of build basically a theory?
Right. They had enough to remove the boys. They had enough at least for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got a question, and you can respond to this in a short way now and in a longer way later on, or we can just put it on the back burner. But the question is, if Don is innocent in this scenario, I'm talking about if something did happen at the swimming hole and Don wasn't there. If something did happen, then why would Don help Candace?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really great question. I have thought of that. I really have thought of that. I've thought of, Don has said from his own words that he doesn't believe that Candace would ever keep anything away from him like that keep anything from him like that. So when he says that, you're thinking, okay, so he must know. But I have thought about that. Like, what if something did happen down at the swimming hole that day? And what if, she kind of handled it on her own, imagine, and she didn't tell him? Do I think that Candace is capable of that? Do I think? And I do think that that is possible. However, to answer your question, I do think that I personally think that she did tell him, and that he does know more than he says he does. And I think that he would have helped her because of secrets that he wouldn't have wanted to get out, that he would have been so afraid of. Yeah.
So if you speak hypothetically and you say, if there was a potential essay involved, right? I'm talking about regardless of if it had happened that day or the day before or weeks before, whatever. If something had happened to Summer and Summer was deceased, as far as I know, isn't it law in America, when a child is found deceased, you have to perform an autopsy? It's kind of a legal requirement. And if that's the case, then you're going to have a autopsy possibly showing SA, and that may have been the issue.
Yeah, I agree. And there's also another thing. I mean, I definitely agree with you. And I would also like to just add, I guess, that I'm thinking of the Jean-Benet Ramsey case, and I'll just leave it there. But you have a situation where, you know, maybe you've already lost one child and you think, oh, you know, this can kind of just open the floodgates to losing everyone else, or something like that, where you might panic and act or do certain things in kind of a state of panic and being afraid that other things might get uncovered, regardless of SA or I mean, there's obviously a lot of other things as well that may have been going on that they would not have wanted to tell the world.
What's really crazy in this case, when you start going down the rabbit holes, is first of all the disappearance of Candace's sister. It's like, oh no, because that's what a lot of us thought at the time, is like, oh no, is it that again? And a lot of us were thinking, well, Summer's going to be found. Maybe Rosemary Bly disappeared and we don't know what happened, but we're gonna find out what happened here. I remember thinking, if someone was involved in Rosemary's disappearance, then they've had a dry run at this. They've had practice. And also it's how do you keep those secrets, kind of thing. You know, it's all of those things are in place. That's the one thing. The other one is, was it Candace's daughter that, I don't know if she ran away from home or something, and I think her name was also Candace. She had a daughter with another dude. She also disappeared for a short time. Yeah. And then there was also two of Don's kids, as far as I can remember, that I don't know if they were, you know, the two of Don's kids with another woman, where I don't know if they were going to be given up for adoption, but there was also some custody scenario. I'm actually quite fuzzy about it now. I can't really remember that very well, but there's been kind of a weird scenario throughout Don's backstory and Candace's backstory, with people and children either disappearing or kind of being in very unsafe situations.
That's right. Yeah. From my memory, from what I recall about that was that Candace had two previous children with someone else before she met Don, and had the 4 children with him. And those 2 children apparently were given up for adoption, or were adopted by someone. I don't know if it was a family member or someone, but those 2 children, she lost custody of them, as far as I recall, and they were eventually then adopted into the system, or possibly. I think it may have been like that. She lost custody of them and they basically were adopted. They have no contact with her. And then the story with Don, as the story goes, allegedly that he had 2 young children, and I think it was just a young boy at the time. I don't think he brought the 2 of them at the same time, but I think it was just his young son. And this was during a period of time where he was using heavily hard drugs. And I guess in his desperation to get those drugs, he reportedly took the small child to, a drug house with him. And
I remember hearing that. We've got to be careful. I don't know whether that is definitely, I don't know if it's definite, but it certainly is rumored. So we don't know that for sure, but it's definitely something that is part of this narrative, whether it's true or not. Certainly part of the shadowy narrative with this.
Right. That's right. One thing, though, that we do know is that Candace and Don do both have previous children with other people, 2 each, and they are not in their lives. That's at least what we know.
And you also don't really hear from them. They've also kind of just disappeared, you know. So that is kind of a question we want to know is, if something did happen, why would Don help Candace? And another thing that is quite interesting is, at the time, like in June, if you went and looked on Candace's Facebook page, she kind of defined the status of their relationship as, I think it's complicated. That was how she kind of put it. And there was definitely some relationship problems between her and Don leading up to this. There was that other fellow that Macbeth and especially Ali talk about, that guy that there was possible, or what's the word, suspected infidelity, where Don thought Candace was cheating on him and he wasn't very happy. And then, one's also got to wonder, at the swimming hole, was there any question of that taking place as well? But anyway, the point is that the relationship was, remember, they married, and yet Candace on her Facebook was saying it's complicated. She's not saying I'm married to Don. She's saying relationship status, it's complicated, which suggests that things aren't really working out so well. And
right.
Yeah.
And Don also had reportedly or allegedly stepped out on Candace as well multiple times. That's something that they've talked about and had been candid about, that there has been infidelity on his side as well.
Just reading a couple of comments here. John Hammer says, bottom line, you look for your missing baby. Yeah, I must say that is something that comes up in quite a few missing persons cases. We kind of go, when did you actually look for this person? And it comes up with Letitia Stork. It comes up with Madeleine McCann, even to some extent John Benet Ramsey. It's like, okay, so did you actually go and look, kind of thing. And in Summer Wells, I guess you could even say, I'm not sure if you could add Suzanne, the Suzanne Morphew case to that as well. But you would kind of expect, like, oh, there is that person searching for Summer, arranging searches for Summer, kind of thing.
Right.
So just going through a couple of other comments here. John Hammer says, so many trails to follow in this one. Pauline Buckle says, there's this hideous family trend to make babies, lose them, and not appear to care. Fire Walk With Me says, yeah, okay, I'm not going to repeat that, but I tend to agree with what you're saying. So before we kind of draw a little bit further into this, I just want to contextualize this case with other cases, like in the timeline, because I sometimes believe that high-profile cases spurn other high-profile cases. Not always, but sometimes I think there is a relationship. So the reason I'm going to go through this is just to spark your memory, just to put into perspective where this case has come from. So if we go back in time to November 2019, JJ and Tylee, that is kind of when they disappeared. That's the Laurie Vallow case. That case is also still in like a legal limbo, and maybe it's going to start in January 2023, if you can believe that.
Wow.
But that was a case where these two kids disappeared, and the parents went on honeymoon in Hawaii, and people were like outraged. But someone could have been watching that and going, well, they just left their kids and nothing really happened. You know what I mean? If you were watching that case, you could kind of go, wow, nothing really happened there. And it's also kind of a thing of no body, no crime. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Then literally about 4 or 5 months later, Suzanne Morphew disappeared. Right? So the Laurie Vallow case kind of took place in Idaho, right? Suzanne Morphew took place in Colorado, although didn't the daughters go to a church camp in Idaho? Was it Idaho or Utah?
They were away at a church camp, and I do not recall where that was exactly.
I think it was Utah, but the point is you've got like a 6 month gap between JJ and Tylee disappearing and then Suzanne Morphew disappearing. And in a weird way, you can say both those cases are like legally unresolved still. It's like, although they found JJ and Tylee, looks like, Suzanne Morphew's remains haven't been found. And then Summer Wells took place literally about a year and 1 month after Suzanne Morphew disappeared, in June last year. So about a year later, so literally a year after Suzanne Morphew disappears, Summer disappears. And if you were involved in Summer's disappearance, you might be going, well, Suzanne Morphew disappeared and someone looks like someone got away with that. So why couldn't we get away with this kind of thing? And then Gabby Petito took place in September 2021. And one wonders whether Brian Laundrie, remember they set off on their summer epic in July 2021. I'm not sure if it was June or July. I think July 2021. Yep. And at that time, the Summer Wells case was very much part of the national headlines, just sort of making national news.
Yeah.
This little girl who disappeared and no one could find her. And then what happens? Gabby Petito disappears in the wild, in a national park, in a sort of a tree line scenario, next to a river. And then Brian sort of goes on the run and he disappears into the woods as well. One wonders, did Brian know about the Summer Wells case? They're driving in their van. Did they turn it onto the radio onto that? Did they hear that on the news? Because as far as I know, Brian and Gabby were following some true crime podcasts. So was Barry Morphew. So, it's quite interesting that. And I've always spoken about intertextuality, and then you get the shock when you see people in a particularly true crime case engaging on social media. You kind of realize, yeah, why wouldn't they? They are out there. They are walking around. They're not like cardboard figures. They are probably looking at what we're looking at, right? To some extent.
Yeah.
Do you remember when Don gave his Sermon on the Mount? He kind of said, oh, I mentioned her name in the past and you're going to talk about that. That kind of showed that he was paying attention to what was being said, Do you remember that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we can all agree that Don has really been paying attention to, well, before he went to prison, he paid a lot of attention. He cared a lot about what was being said about him and his family.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
And Don seemed to care a lot about how things looked, because all along he's sort of invoked God. You know what I mean? Even in his letter, it kind of brings in the Lord's Prayer. I don't know if people saw that.
Yeah.
That's
there
as
worked
well.
For him. That worked for him.
Yeah.
It was a good, that was part of the strategy.
Yeah. So there's a comment by Magic Dragonfly where she says, I think an accident at home happened. And there's definitely some substance to that. And I want to share this link with you guys. And this is the thing that kind of, what's the word? Throws a bit of a spanner into the works. I showed you this not that long ago, Bria. It's a neighbor seeing certain things or hearing certain things. So this article is titled, "Neighbor of Summerwell says she heard screams shortly before she went missing." Now, I'm going to go through that with you guys, but I just want to respond to this point about did an accident happen at home. It's possible that a lot of what is said is true, that they went home and they planted cactuses and they took the groceries and carried them indoors, and the boys were playing computer games and this, that, and the next thing. And then it's possible something did happen. So, for example, it's possible Summer fell down the stairs, right? But this is where there's a problem. If Summer fell down the stairs, let's take that scenario, and she just tripped over her feet, and there was no big deal. She just tripped over her feet, fell down. Then you've got to ask, why on earth wouldn't you call 911? Why would there be this cloak and dagger situation? And you might say because there's SA or whatever, but if you come back to it and say, she just tripped and fell down the stairs, it wouldn't really be anyone's fault, would it? And then you've kind of got to ask yourself, could there be a situation where something happened that wasn't on purpose? It wasn't on purpose. It was an accident, but it was kind of an accident waiting to happen. In other words, it's a kind of scenario as has been suggested in the Kaylee Anthony case. So with Kaylee Anthony, some people believe that she was sedated repeatedly with Xanax. So Xanax was Zanny the nanny. And so when Casey wanted to go out and have fun, then Zanny would do her thing. And so maybe on one occasion, Zanny, she gave her too much Xanax or something like that. And that's like an accident waiting to happen kind of thing. It's like she could have sedated her 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times without a problem. And then eventually there is a problem. And so there's no intention to actually hurt her or harm her in this theory, but then she is hurt or harmed. But then nevertheless, if you did an autopsy, you would say, why is there this drug in this person's system? And then you would be somewhat responsible, right?
Right.
There's also the argument that could have taken, I'm talking about in the Kaylee Anthony case, there's also the argument that was happening or could have been happening, and then there was actually an executive decision, I actually can't live like this anymore. And then there was something else used like chloroform or whatever, right? So in other words, it wasn't an innocent sedation, it was actually something else. But one's got to think about those scenarios in a case like this as well and say, something could have happened that wasn't done intentionally. It was an accident, but nevertheless, there were aggravating circumstances surrounding that. And those would put a person in a really bad light, Right. And so you'd want to protect the other person, whatever. And so one of the things that's come up is how much alcohol was consumed at the swimming hole. And you raised a really good point, Bria, that could Summer swim? And that to me was something that came out very late in the whole thing, is why did it take so long to say, you know what, Summer actually can't swim?
That's right. And also too, while you're talking about, substances, and you use the Kaylee Anthony case as, an intertextuality, which is also very interesting to me. I know we've talked about this on Patreon, but I mean, we've talked about this on Patreon, but there is a particular drink. Kids drink it. It's kind of like a mixture of like cough syrup and a certain I don't know if it's Mountain Dew, but a certain particular type of soda, and this cough syrup with codeine and something else. Oh, I can't remember right now, but it's very popular and a lot of kids drink this drink. It's called Lean, and who knows? I mean, imagine, we could imagine a scenario where they're down at the water hole and someone's, you know, kind of going off into the back of the woods to do this and that, and someone's, maybe Summer picked up a cup of something and took some, and then she's out in the water, and
yeah,
you know, those effects start happening too. But even if that did happen, just the fact that she couldn't actually swim, you wouldn't even need, you know, we know how easy it is for a child at that age to drown and to succumb to water. But all of those are really interesting points, and these are possibilities.
Yeah, I mean, that's another rabbit hole. Was Summer sedated in order for someone else to be able to do whatever they want to do, or was Summer, what's the word, given a substance with some nefarious ideas in mind? Now, if you think about it in a very sort of, what's the word? If you think that you can even take it back quite far, because Don is a lot older than Candace, right? And Candace had another husband who was like a father figure, but a lot older than what she was. And in fact, I think Don met Candace through her stepsisters. That's actually how they met, right? But what I'm trying to get at is you kind of have this much older person who kind of, what's the word, may use substances in order to create certain scenarios. And I mean, all of us have, you know, if you've been a kid in high school or whatever, you've been in a situation where you're at a party and the idea is young men and young boys and girls will sort of get together, and then the idea is that the substances will sort of, what's the word, pave the way for fun, I guess, if you want to put it that way, right? But you can also have a situation where you have someone who is quite a bit older, who maybe has more money or whatever it is, and then they either manipulate or they mistreat someone in a way, I want to use another word, but where they basically use these substances in order to basically gain a certain kind of hold over someone else. And so if that has happened from one person to another, let's say from, well, I'm not going to mention names here, but from one to the other, then you've, let's say, had it from another person, let's say in terms of the swimming hole, from another person to a teenager. Why would it not then go from the teenager to Summer as well, kind of thing? You know what I mean? Yeah. In other words, if you have this habit of using these substances to create this uninhibited state, well, I've learned this from you, and now I'm applying it to you, and you apply it to the next person, and on and on and on, kind of thing.
Yeah, intergenerational substance abuse.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
And you could I mean, oh, sorry to interrupt. You could say the same thing with SA as well. We could just put that out there too.
Yeah, I must say you can have both of those going on at the same time. Intergenerational SA and intergenerational substance abuse, and I think they go hand in hand. You have the one with the other, and I think it eventually gets so bad that you eventually have kids born with things like is it fecal alcohol syndrome and
fetal,
all of these things because of
fetus,
fetal. And that is how chronic it is. And then and it's got certain kinds of, it's something that I investigated while covering the Summer Wells cases, what appearance you have when you've got the syndrome. And one's got to wonder whether that's the case. Yeah, but you only have it when the substance abuse is chronic, and where it is like, it's really a part of the lifestyle, and it's intergenerational. The part that I don't understand is if some of the speculation that we're talking about here is accurate or somewhat accurate, and there's so much substance abuse, and you kind of got to wonder, it's almost like a drunk driver outsmarting the police car that's driving after them. It's like, how on earth can the drunk driver get away?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
He's compromised.
Impaired,
He's
right.
not. Yeah, he's impaired. Absolutely, that's the right word. He's impaired, and nevertheless he gets away.
Right.
And that's a lot what this case feels like. It's like you've got what appears to be impaired folk
Right.
involved in something, and then nothing happens, and it's like,
So
how did that
frustrating.
happen? Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Agree.
Okay, so do you want to share some of your thoughts and insights? I'm going to come back to the neighbor, what the neighbor said, because that's definitely another possibility. Is that, I mean, I believe that when Summer arrived back, she was unconscious, kind of thing. But the neighbor hearing the scream suggests that there's another scenario. So, do you want to share some of your thoughts based on your research?
About that particular topic about the neighbor hearing the scream, I mean, that is really interesting. So I am of the same belief that I feel like something possibly happened at the water hole. The reason, as well as the last photo, and if I've learned anything from True Crime Rocket Science and from you, those types of photographs are extremely important. So we have to keep that in the back of our mind. Also, Allie's testimony that she is adamant that she saw exactly what depicted in the last photo which was an sleeping or an unconscious Summer, kind of just slumped over the milk jug. So there's that. And then the fact that her son kind of blatantly lies about that. Well, you can talk about that later. But when you know that, you imagine, or at least I imagine, that she would be getting worse and not suddenly jumping up out of the truck upon arriving at home and planting and doing this and that, or running around or playing hide and go seek with people. We would imagine, we could assume that she would be getting worse. So we also have to remember that the scream, I mean, it took a while for that information to also come out. Apparently, the neighbors sort of said it right away, apparently, but nobody else really reported on that or really knew about that until quite a while later. So it kind of raises an eyebrow, at least, to wonder, like, how much we can really believe that. I'm not saying I don't believe it. I'm not saying I don't believe it, but then you have to think about this. If there was a scream, well, I mean, who's to say it was Summer or any of the Wells family members? Who's to say?
Some folks in the comments are saying could have been Candace or whatever.
Right.
But just to be specific, the person's name, the neighbor's name is Jody Sue Brown, and it wasn't only her; it was also her. She had a 19-year-old and a 14-year-old that was there as well, so this is what she says. She's a 10-year resident of Ben Hill Road. She says there were no TVs and no noise at all. She was in her cabin with her 2 kids. She says we were kind of hyper alert because of property things that happened the day before. So we were listening for noise. Everyone was kind of quiet, which seems a bit odd in a way. She says there was a property sale that brought a plethora of people to their door, confused about which piece of land was for sale, leading to a dispute of property lines. So you can see there was already, you already have a weird scenario there where it seems like strangers were wandering around, and also there was some kind of property dispute where people were arguing about, well, whose property is whose or something like that. And then she says, while we were out at one point doing survey lines, there was a flash of a car that went up Candace and Donnie's driveway. Something about it struck me wrong. And then she says, the next sound they heard was harder to justify. So she heard a truck door slamming. And then she says her son and daughter heard something far more suspicious, a scream. So she didn't hear the scream. The kids actually heard it. And actually, apparently she did hear it. She says, it stopped all three of us cold. Her daughter was the first to go to the cabin door. Then all three were there listening still. We heard this shrill, almost animalistic scream. Animalistic, but not an animal, according to Brown. I knew it was wrong. It wasn't a dog. It wasn't an animal. My son and I decided to go out and see what we could see. We went back onto the bank, didn't see anything, didn't hear anything. I think you could have another potential scenario here, and the scenario could be, can you imagine if after the last photo, Candace and Grandma drive home, and when they arrive home, they perhaps realize Summer's not okay. What could be the result of that, right?
That's right.
In other words, because I don't know, so I mean, let's consider the possible scenarios of the scream. The one scream could be someone is taking you away, so it's a stranger, and so you're screaming because I don't recognize this person, and that's why I'm screaming. The other one could be you fall off a tree, or you fall off a rock, or you fall down some kind of, you know, what's the word, like a kind of a cliff face or some distance, or you fall down the stairs. I don't think you'd hear anything if you're indoors falling down the stairs, but or you were on the swing and you fell off or something like that. Or another possibility is that one of Summer's brothers did something, and then Summer screamed, right? But I don't know if you would have a situation where I don't know where Summer is. In other words, like you sort of wake up and you realize I don't know where Summer is, and then you scream. You know what I mean? So
Right.
I don't think when someone disappears, you kind of just start screaming, like in that kind of way. The other thing that I think is really odd with this is the scream wasn't mentioned by Candace or Don early on. It's not mentioned in the Sermon on the Mount, right?
No.
There's no reference to it, and they didn't even mention it in interviews to the media early on. They didn't say, I'm talking about in the first days, weeks, and even months. The first time that the scream came up was like in November.
Right.
So you kind of got to ask, did the TBI ask them not to mention anything about that? I suppose that's possible, but why on earth would they, you know?
Right. Or if the neighbor just told the police and not to, it sort of felt like to me that maybe Don didn't know that until November, until he started talking, oh yeah, the neighbor heard something. Maybe he learned that later on, but maybe the neighbor didn't just say, oh yeah, hey, gee, did you know that I had heard this, roughly a half an hour before you guys started looking around the property for her. Another thing that I think about is that how likely is it that Candace and the grandma, they admit that Summer did fall asleep, at least on the way home. How likely is it that she's going to wake up from a nap and just be screaming in that way? Like, you wake up, you might be groggy, and you might be, you would imagine that she would have been hungry or something at some point in the day. That's a very good thing to also note, is that she did not eat or any food. And it's like, how could that have been? I could imagine her maybe not eating much and maybe getting by for the first part of the morning and the swimming thing, but after that, you're going to be famished, starving. There's no way
no, definitely.
a little kid is
Definitely.
going to be able to last with no food all day. And if she did make it home and jumped up and started doing, she's going to be eating something for sure. For sure, she's going to be wanting some food. And there's no mention of making food. There's mention of other things being done, but not eating. And the boys, I mean, they'd been there all day by themselves. Surely they must have been hungry. I mean, she supposedly went and got groceries, but she doesn't mention that she gave them anything from that to eat. And I think that that's just very strange.
So while you were talking, I was just thinking about something that came up fairly early on, was grandma's medication. Like, to me, what's quite odd is, has her medication ever been identified? Did they ever say what that medication was? And we do know that I think it was pain medication. But the other thing that came up, I know while I was researching this case, was the possibility of what are those substances that, because there's an addiction to that in America. It's got a certain name. I can't actually. Opiate addiction, yeah. So one wonders whether grandma's pain medication. So in other words, maybe grandma really was in pain and really needed medication, but why would that stop you from, if it's opiates, taking one kind of thing, you know?
Right.
I must say, if you join the dots, one really has got to wonder, what if a little girl took some or other substance and maybe took a sip of beer or some kind of alcohol? What could have happened to that little girl, either independent of swimming or added to swimming, kind of thing? And then if you look at that situation, then who would be responsible for, like, if you had a little girl taking some or other substance, who would be then responsible for that? And yeah, you have a woman that has been, I guess, drinking certain things at certain times. I know Ellie said that Ellie's words were, I think, that Candace got drunk every night at 5 o'clock, if I remember correctly. I think she said that on, yeah. So yeah, you have one person who, so if you just think about kids in a situation where you're often getting drunk, at what point is a kid not want to also have a drink or have a sip, kind of thing? And then if there are other things going on, at what point does that also not play a factor?
Right.
And if you bring it back to the Casey Anthony case and you say, Casey wants to have fun, she wants to drink and she wants to do whatever, and then you say, she's learned that certain substances can make you feel a certain way. And so why not use those substances to make someone else feel a certain way? In that case, sleepy, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Absolutely.
And one wonders whether that wasn't something that was attempted in this case, because it seems interesting that it's not just the swimming hole, it's also getting grandma's pain medication. And this is a little bit of a different situation. It's not like these are very wealthy people that can get some of that kind of thing, you know, easily. It's almost like this is the jackpot. We're now going to get, you know, this really special pain medication. And I don't know what, sometimes you can mix those things and make certain kinds of cocktails. And we do know that they made all those stops. I mean, you know, didn't you record that timeline that Candace gave? Didn't you record that quite recently? Where she gave all the stops that she made?
Yes, I did. Yes, yes. She kind of, I mean, it's within basically 5 minutes of her interview her first interview down at the swimming hole with Chris. She just jumps into her timeline and basically just rattles off a list of every single stop she made, which none of the other people being interviewed in the story did that. I mean, it goes on and on. You kind of have to make the timeline yourself. And then Candace, she just gets right to the point. And she says, you know, the reason why she's kind of doing this is to say, hey, you know, Hunter lied, that Ali's son had lied to them when he was giving his account of what happened. And here, I'm going to tell you what really happened. And
yeah, she's quite adamant about that.
Right. And there was only one discrepancy, really. So, I mean, they basically sort of said the same thing, really, except for kind of this one, you know, stop that there is a discrepancy there, but it's kind of almost the same thing. So yeah, she kind of goes right through her timeline and just says exactly where they went and what happened. Well, to her recollection.
Yeah. What did they? I know they stopped at Sonic, but they never stopped for lunch. I think they got like a Coke at Sonic, right?
They got just like these slushy drinks.
Yeah.
Right. And there is actually a little discrepancy in the flavors that they all ordered between Macbeth's account of the flavors that he recalls that they ordered, and Candace's account of the flavors that they had ordered. There's a minor discrepancy there, but I mean, yeah, that's all they got.
Yeah.
And Chris asks them, did you get food? And Candace says, no food, she said.
Yeah. I mean, that is definitely something you've got to wonder about is, I mean, by the time the last photo was taken, it was 3:09. That's quite late. That's quite late to be going to all the places they were going, and you still haven't had lunch yet, you know?
Right.
And it kind of makes you think something must have happened kind of much earlier on, like 12 o'clock or somewhere, that by the time you want to have lunch, well, now something has taken over that, right?
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think the not having lunch thing it's one of those things of the absence of evidence is evidence. Like, why did you not have lunch?
Yeah,
You bought all these other things you could have. What's going on? You know,
you're going through a drive-through also upon leaving. That the fact that they didn't buy even Summer, like her favorite food was French fries, and they always would say that they kind of almost had to get her some fries at least, and that's what she loved. And they didn't purchase any French fries. And I have a sneaky suspicion that possibly the drinks was kind of like one of the first stops that they made upon leaving the swimming. And maybe they were thinking, you know, she possibly could have been compromised, and they were thinking, you know, let's try to kind of, you know, wake her up or something. Let's see if she can drink something, not knowing maybe at that point that it was serious. But because we can't forget that they do not know how long she was actually underwater. Nobody knows.
Yeah.
And so maybe they thought it was only maybe a minute or less, who knows, but and thinking, okay, like, you know, maybe we'll try to get her a drink and see if that helps, but it's hard to say.
Zircon also says there were no empty cups, but like it's not even like when they arrive home that they eat, you know. It's like, if you remember correctly, Candace I think says they got home and then Summer helped her do a load of washing. Do you remember that?
I do remember that, but I don't remember that she said that Summer helped her. I just remember that she said, and then we did laundry.
Yeah, you could be right. I don't know if it was Summer, but anyway, what stuck out was laundry. So you're doing laundry.
She's implying that Summer's still around, doing this, doing that, playing, going across, planting, doing this, but her words were, and then we did laundry. And then she goes off into this tangent about how everyone has so much clothes and she just has to do laundry. And I mean, you know, I'm a mom, I have 3 kids. I do a lot of laundry, as a lot of you may do, but there's no way I'm doing laundry. Like, I can't see it. I just cannot relate to that. as much laundry as I do. I thought that that was just a massive red flag, and I find it highly unbelievable that, I mean, she of all people in the state of her home, and when you just look around, does anyone really believe that Candace is going to be doing, you know, all these other things, and then in the middle of all of this, she just decides to do some laundry? There's no way. I can't see it. I'm sorry I'm smiling. I mean, it's so ridiculous that it's almost it's almost laughable how just ridiculous it sounds.
So in line with that thing that we mentioned earlier, where, you know, could the strategy of law enforcement have been wait and see, you know, like someone's gonna slip up somewhere, you know, this is gonna be ridiculously easy. If you think about that beyond the usual suspects, and you think about that in terms of the Wells boys, and you kind of think there's not just like one. Summer doesn't just have one brother; she's got three brothers, right?
Right.
And they're of different ages. And the other side to that is you've kind of got to wonder, when they're away from home for a week, then a month, then it's 3 months, then it's 6 months, then we're approaching a year now that they'd be away from home. You've also kind of got to wonder, are they potentially going to be a source of insight into what really happened? And I think what's quite interesting, if you think about where the boys enter the story, we know that, first of all, there's the quite interesting volunteering that the last time that the boys saw Summer, they kind of didn't see her. If you think about it, if you think about the story goes, Summer went into the house and the boys were all, their eyes were like glued to the TV, and they were playing computer games or watching things on YouTube. I can't really remember which. That's also something that was inconsistent. It computer games.
Well,
but the point being,
sorry. Candace said that they were watching TV and sleeping at the same time. And then I think Dawn said that they were playing Minecraft on the computer. I mean, there was a bunch of different stories.
Yeah. But the point being, it's like, and that's the other thing as well, in Candace's own story, it's like, Mom going into the house to play with the boys. And then she doesn't play with the boys, she goes downstairs. And so it's like the boys are witnesses, except they're not witnesses. Like they, you know, so like if you say, if you take this in a very legalistic way and you say, Candace, you are their mother and it's your job to look after Summer, what happened? And then Candace says, oh, Summer said to me, I'm going to go inside and play with the boys. Well, now the baton of responsibility transfers to the boys, right?
That's
Except
right.
it's like a fake baton, because the boys, do the boys ever see her if the boys aren't looking at her and she goes downstairs and then she disappears from downstairs? So it's kind of like this thing of, it's not my job to look after her because she's not going inside the house and now they'll be safe, or she'll be safe. But in a way, can you see, it's kind of like this weird narrative. That's why I call this a semantic case. It's all about how the semantics sort of are used, but they don't really line up.
Yeah,
but that doesn't mean none of. Yeah. Then the other side to the boys is the boys then help search for her, but they kind of go and search for her on their own. They go and search down the creek. So it's kind of like Candace is somewhere. Grandma, I think, is basically at her trailer. I don't think Grandma moves around much. But you kind of get the idea that the kids are on their own. They're not with Candace. And so it's like, so a kid has just been taken, so now you're going to let your 3 kids go and run around looking for her, but you're convinced that she's taken.
Right.
And do you remember what Don said? Don said kind of like, I knew immediately she was taken. You know, it's like, that's kind of their stories, that I knew immediately they were taken. Well, then the boys should come into the house. You know what I mean? You had the same thing with Madeleine McCann, where Kate McCann goes into the hotel room, realizes that Madeleine's been taken, but there are two other little babies lying there as well. And then she runs out of the hotel room, abandoning the other two kids with the window open. Now, in reality, no one would ever do that. You know, if you thought that was the case, you wouldn't do that. You know.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And I think that like as you say, and I do agree, this case is about semantics and, you know, and when we try to kind of sift through that, it is actually kind of confusing. So what I remember is there's two things with them looking for her, and I'm referring to the boys looking for her, and then even months are going by and you're kind of hearing about a possible hide and seek game going on, and we can talk about that. So there's a couple things that come to mind is that and I only rediscovered this, I guess, last night when I was reviewing Allison's timeline. I guess she recalls around 11:30 midnight, and there were the other people in her group. They were also there present, viewing Candace, telling them about kind of the events that had taken place after she had dropped off her son, and had come home, had discovered that Summer had gone missing. And she was describing the moments where she and the boys were looking for her. And what she said was to them, this is what they said, that that she had asked the boys to go look for her, and she said that they had looked everywhere, but they still couldn't find her. And then she had said, well, maybe she's downstairs. And then Ali said, well, how did you look downstairs? And she said, I looked downstairs for 20 minutes and I couldn't find her. And I'm wondering, that really makes me think again that like maybe she kind of orchestrated this hide and seek game, kind of sending them sort of on this wild goose chase. And that comes up again when she said, in her interview with Chris, said, I sent them down to the creek. So again, you have this scenario where there's this bad person out there doing, snatching your daughter, and you send them down to the creek to look for her. And she sent them. She said that from her own words. And I'm thinking and then I'm thinking in my own head, like maybe she said, maybe at one point one of the boys said, hey, gee, where's Summer? And she said, oh, I don't know, where is she? And then that kind of just started it. And, oh, where is she? Oh, me. And then at some point it's, maybe she's playing hide and seek. Maybe she's here. Maybe she's there. Maybe. And maybe now they're kind of going around. And then the kind of hide and seek game kind of just evolved into this kind of search, and then finding that, she wasn't, I'm talking about the boys, then realizing she wasn't around any of these places where they had hoped or thought or were told that she possibly was.
Yeah.
I know the semantics, you try to make sense of it. It's not easy. It's confusing.
No, for sure. I just had a thought now, it just slipped my mind. What is that other thing that happened? So I'm just trying to think there's something else that I just wanted to mention. Anyway, keep going. It'll probably the moment you start talking, I'll come back to that.
Yeah, well, and so I was just thinking about that. I mean, where did the boys come into it? To me, it seems clear that she kind of intentionally drags them into this story. As you said, it's she, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's just, do you remember the dispatcher said the mother's just gone for a walk, or the mother says she's just come back from a walk, and that is a critical little nugget
It
that
is.
because Candace kind of later said, no, I would never go for a walk, and there are critters here, and I would never do that. And that's kind of like, I mean, I think I said this in a recent video. I said, could that walk have been to the shed and back kind of thing?
Right.
Right?
Yeah, that's a really that's a good interesting point to make. The walk,
Yeah.
because I do remember that. I do recall that I mean, why would the a 911 dispatcher say that if she hadn't been told that? And so where did they walk to? I mean, where did that, if it can't, she did deny that, Candace did, but I just don't see why the
She could
911.
even have driven. I think she even later on said that she drove somewhere. Didn't she say that as well at some point?
Well, she
She
says
got
that
back
she
and
hopped
she said she
into
went,
her
yeah.
mother's truck and was searched. After she made the call, she said I wasn't going to just sit around and wait. So I jumped in mom's truck and I went everywhere. She said, I blew up looking everywhere. She said, I went down here. She said, I think she said she went down to the, I don't know if she said the shed or down to the end of the property where there is sheds. I think there's sheds kind of peppered all over the property. That's what I thought. You know, I think there's like a 3 or 4 of them at least that we know of on their property. And she did say that she jumped in the truck and started driving around looking. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing that's quite interesting is that Don, I seem to remember that Don, I can't remember if he reacted to this on his Facebook, but it came up that I'm a bit fuzzy on it, but weren't there messages on Don's phone that were deleted, or there's something on Don's phone that, and it came up in a news story, and then he reacted to that, I think, on Facebook or something like that. Do you remember that?
I don't recall that.
Do you remember there were like multiple polygraph tests as well?
Yeah, I do recall. Yeah. I recall that. So it's the same. Well, they did talk about it. That Allison said that when Candace showed up at their home 2 days after the incident, and she had talked to them about having to go down to the station the following day to do another polygraph test. And someone said that she had failed the first one, and then Dawn and them kind of corrected that, saying she didn't fail it, but they were unable to administer the test because she was, I get what they said, she was so distraught, but also too, I mean, any polygraph expert will not be able to administer a polygraph if you're under the influence of certain particular substances. So who knows why the first polygraph wasn't able to be administered, but apparently it wasn't. And a second polygraph was done days later.
But I think that was also where the police may have thought the one's going to throw the other under the bus, because do you remember when, didn't Don sort of say, who said that she failed the polygraph? I think Don was asked about it, and then he kind of said, you know, I'm just trying to remember whether it was like a case of I was polygraphed, I passed, she's been polygraphed, I don't know. But
Don did say that, and I think he did say that on Dr. Phil. And I do recall that Macbeth, he said, because she failed the first one, I don't know, he said she has to go take another test because she failed the first. He kind of said that, and I think maybe that just caught on and people ran with it. And then I think Don later said several times, I think I did hear him say that, oh, we've all taken polygraphs, we've passed with flying colors, Candace has passed, we've all passed, everyone's passed. And I think it did also again come up on Dr. Phil that they had taken polygraphs and had passed.
And wasn't that the reason, like, Chris McDonough asked Macbeth, didn't he like say, why did Candace call you? And I think the scenario was she was on the way to being polygraphed, I think.
Yeah,
And then it
something
was
like
like
that.
she was trying to clarify, like, what did you say? You know what I mean? She was trying
Yes,
to like find
asked
out.
him. He said
Yeah,
that she had
yeah.
asked him, "What did you tell the police?" And he said that he had just told them what had happened, and she had said, "That better be it." And he said,
Mm.
"You don't scare me." And then Chris said, "Well, why do you think she asked you if you know, why do you think she would think that you would need to be scared?" He said, "That's what I'm saying. I have no idea. Why would I be scared?" Kind of thing. Kind of
I
strange.
think something also that came up was, I think Macbeth said that Candace said, don't talk about the alcohol. Didn't that come up?
That did come up.
Yeah. So I just want
And
to,
Candace maintains that when she's asked about that, she says, you know, I put it right there on the console of the vehicle. Well, she says she didn't give it to him. If she took it, he may have took it. She said that she never saw him drink any alcohol, and she doesn't really know what happened. If he took it, he basically took it on his own accord and then kind of snuck it somewhere that she didn't see him drinking any alcohol. But he says that he was drinking it right down there at the water hole, and he was just right around them, just drinking it. She had offered it to
yeah.
him and what have you. So there are just discrepancies again with that.
What I found really kind of ironic and interesting was there seems to be not like mild substance abuse here, but like quite extreme, except when it comes to Macbeth. Then it's like he may have had one tiny little drink, a what's it called, a twisted lemon, or what was the
Twisted
name of
tea.
it?
A twisted tea.
Twisted tea. That's it. Yeah, it's like um, we drank responsibly, or you know what I mean. Like it was really just couldn't have been more innocent. It's like, yeah,
For
right.
sure.
You
Well,
know,
he said Chris asked him, how many did you have? How many did she buy? He said just one. There was one. He asked
mm.
if Candace had consumed any alcohol, and his answer was she was driving. Of course not.
Yeah. Although I must say, when you saw her in the last photo video, she seems fairly normal. You know, that's also worth saying. Terry Dean, thanks very much for that super chat. Terry says, thanks, Nick and Bria, for walking us through the sad anniversary. It is sad. I mean, we've got to, in a way, just slow down and say, where is she? What did happen to her? And we don't know. Like we a year later, and it's like this little girl is still missing, and even her brothers have been taken away, and it's a very unsatisfying, troubling, disturbing. There isn't even an ending. It's just like continuing. I mean, it's not the conclusion that I think any of us would have expected. Anyway, Terry says, I don't think Summer was conscious when they got home. Um, Somebody oversold that to Chris by saying she jumped up like it was nothing. Yeah. Um, the thing that I think is quite interesting is it feels like certain people are protecting other people. And I think the same applies to a mother and her teenage son. I think there's also a certain amount of things that she saw, but also I'm going to protect my son kind of thing.
Yeah. Would you say a certain level of enabling possibly, which is how a lot of these people kind of function, really. The enabling sometimes can
Yeah.
be the worst part of some of these situations.
Yeah, I think something that's quite interesting is, you know, no one is forcing X person to be with Y person. And the same even applies to grandma. No one's forcing grandma to stay at Chalet Wells, but she chooses to. There must be a reason for that. No one's forcing Candace to stay at Chalet Wells. I'm talking about prior to all of this happening. And even after it happened, she chose to. So there's some, in some way, she's getting what she wants. She's getting some kind of benefit out of it, some kind of maybe a feel good benefit, but she's kind of getting what she wants. In terms of Macbeth, um, he's given quite a lot of freedom. I mean, his mom allows him to go fishing, and he ends up not going fishing, and doesn't Ali know Candace quite well. And it's sort of sketched as we have a great relationship, meaning Macbeth and Summer, and it's like I don't know how many 15 or 16-year-olds do you know that kind of have great relationships with 5-year-olds? Like, you know, most of the time you would kind of say a 15-year-old, the last person, the last thing you'd want to do is babysit someone who's got to be taken care of. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And that's such a good point, because we can't also forget that the two adults in the situation, the two mothers, had a falling out.
Yeah.
And they were no
The two
longer.
mothers knew each other very, very well. They knew each other very, very well.
They did. But at the time, they were not on speaking terms. But yet, Ali still allows her son to go with her. It's interesting.
It definitely is interesting.
And you wonder if then again, another child, Summer, isn't used in some type of way to allow that to kind of happen. It's like, oh, well, they say it. They're like, well, Summer was there, so it was okay. Just,
yeah.
You know, it's interesting.
Definitely is. Okay, so let's look at some more comments here. So, Bria, I want to ask you about something I know you've been wanting to talk about for a while, the dogs, right?
Yeah. Right.
But let's just look at some of the comments here. Beverly Lawyer talks about Jose. Tinfoil Brat, Summers brothers, in my humble opinion, were not taken away. Okay. Gathering Place, good to see you. We've missed you. We haven't seen you for a while. Something that I think is quite interesting, and it happens a lot, is a case like this takes place and then the social media gets scrubbed. And some people remember it. Some people have got screen grabs of it, but it's very easy just to forget that it's there. And do you guys remember the TikTok video that Candace put up where, and I think I made a video of it, it's where Candace looks like she's in a garden, and I think she's smoking a cigarette or something, and she's sort of on one side of the screen kind of going like this, and on the other side of the screen, on this side of the screen, is like a statue, and she's kind of going like this, and the statue's there. I'm not going to be totally explicit about what she seems to be suggesting, but it's pretty what's the word? It seems to be aimed at a particular almost age group, if I can put it that way. And one's got to wonder, who is that message for, and was the message received, and what was all of that about, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you guys remember that particular TikTok? I mean, it was it was pretty clear what was kind of going on there.
Yeah, I remember that. I do remember that. To be honest, I kind of feel like a lot of the TikTok kind of content, if you will, is kind of geared towards kind of a younger audience. And the fact that it keeps coming up, I mean, all Macbeth really says that that Candace was doing was just doing TikToks, and one wonders, like, if she, not to bait him into, or to try to relate to him in some type of way, but she's sitting there, you know, Facebook and TikToks. I mean, I spend a lot of time around kids and young persons, because I'm a gym coach. And well, I know that in that environment, we're not doing that, but I mean, you know, we have a rule. It's like, leave your phones, phones are over here. I talk to them about a lot of different stuff, and I can't ever recall a time where I'm just sitting there, you know, going through Facebook and TikToks with that particular crowd. I don't find it actually very normal or usual or really appropriate personally. And I find that really just kind of odd. And if you do look through Candace's TikTok videos, I mean, even the ones that she does with her own kids are just inappropriate is just an understatement, you know?
Even the TikTok she did of Summer, if you remember, Summer's kind of in the water, and then it sort of turns to show Macbeth, and then Macbeth, he's got his shirt off and he sort of strides in and does whatever, and then Candace seems to sort of turn around and zooms in on a flower or something. But if you remember I can't remember the song that was playing, but it was very teenagery. It was very like a gangster kind of thing, and it seems like Candace's whole vibe was the sort of bad girl kind of thing, and one wonders what I mean. That's something that I don't know if Chris McDonough really asked much about that. Like, you know, what did you? I think he did ask about it, but I think Macbeth answered, well, she's a married woman kind of thing, and it wasn't much more than that. But you've actually kind of got to wonder between the lines. As you say, in his own words, he was saying that him and Summer were looking at TikTok videos when they were in the car and whatever. But what is Candace doing? She's recording TikTok videos all the time. There's that very suggestive TikTok video that we're talking about. Who's that aimed at? I don't think it's aimed at Don. I don't think it's aimed at Ellie. I don't think it's aimed at Grandma. So who is it aimed at? And if you look at some of the ways that Candace dresses up, she sort of has a cap back to front and kind of a scarf on her head. So she's like a pirate, and she's kind of got this sort of badass thing going on. And it's like, who's that supposed to impress? Not Don, I don't think.
Right, no.
Yeah, Thug Life, that's it. Christina, good one. Good one. You got it right. Yeah.
Drug Life.
But yeah, so you know, all of this is going on, and it's like you've kind of got to ask, what did Summer have to do with all of that? Like, if Macbeth was there because he could get a free cigarette or a free beer, well, that's why he's there. If Grandma's there because of pain medication, well, that's why she's there. If Candace is there because she wants to, you know, have a swim or whatever, and that's why she's there. Why is Summer there? Why is Summer part of this thing? Why wasn't? And that's I think another interesting thing is, why wasn't Summer just left with the boys?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good question.
And it also comes back to who the boys left with. And if the answer is that Don did go to work, so maybe it's true that he did go to work, then you already have a scenario of, so the boys are actually left by themselves, and that's not really right. Right? So if you can say, it's okay, well, we'll leave these three young boys to themselves, it's not really ideal. Well, then when you go to a swimming hole with Summer, what's your level of care going to be in that situation? It's just quite an interesting calculus if you do it that way. Melissa says, I don't believe Grandis went down by the water. I tend to agree with that. Tennis Connie says, leaving some in the truck with a jacket and long pants with a 15-year-old boy. It is quite interesting how warmly dressed Summer was for supposedly hot day. She was dressed pretty warmly. And it does make one wonder, was she dressed? Because like you'd kind of wonder, wouldn't you be dressed kind of in your swimming clothes and towel? That's often how children are dressed after they've been swimming. They don't necessarily get fully dressed after, and certainly not in long sleeve clothing. It may just be that Summer was, she was about to go to school and she was, what's the word, excited about it and in love with her uniform. But it could also be, what if there was something on her arm, a bruise or something, a scratch or something, possibly from the branches in that river that needed to be concealed for the last photo. Who knows? Okay, so I want to get down to, I want to talk about the dogs. Andar says, you see how they could lose track of her at the waterhole if she was basically there as a prop while Macbeth and Candace hung out. It could be that Summer was brought along to, how can I put it? It's something that you see quite a lot with teenagers is a brother or another person will come along, and then that person is supposed to be an indication to parents that everything is above board, right? So a third party will be there almost as if to say, nothing to see here, everything that is taking place is completely, what's the word, innocent, right?
That's right.
And then it's not. And then it's not innocent.
Like a ploy.
Yeah, absolutely. So Summer may have been part of that whole thing to suggest that there's going to be an innocent thing taking place, and maybe it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't innocent. But then also Summer needs to be out of the equation because she's going to get in the way, or she's going to be a nuisance kind of thing. Right. Yeah, chaperone, yeah. Margie says to make it look innocent. Andor says, yes, exactly. It could be a cover for the real agenda. Pauline says, Summer was brought along to legitimize the adventure. Possible.
Yeah, because how weird would it have been if Candace just showed up alone that morning? She would have then been alone.
And,
yeah,
exactly.
And hey, oh, we're just going. Oh, I mean, what are you gonna say? No, she was used to make it seem innocent. And then there's so many questions surrounding this, because it's like, well, were they really on the phone? I mean, I think that he, when you're 15 years old and you want cigarettes and you want alcohol or booze, or particularly weed or other types of substances, you probably have someone. I'm speaking from what I know, is that you need someone to get that for you. And you may know someone, like a lot of people, a 15-year-olds might have a 21-year-old brother or a 30-year-old neighbor or friend. There's someone, if you're doing that kind of thing, you're kind of in a circle or hanging out, you know who you can call, and hopefully, you can score. And he may have called a few people, and Candace said, okay, I can do that. What you do is at 15 or however old you are, you say, okay, I'll give you gas money if you do, go get this and this, or I'll buy you this, like maybe, here, I'll get like, I don't know, like a box of cigarettes, and you can have, 2 packs out of this or that, or we'll go score some drugs, and you can have some of it. So the person, the adult who's going to be doing this for that person is thinking, okay, well, you can benefit out of them. I mean, I remember, kids in high school who were doing that, and they would, okay, give someone $50 for you have some money. So it's like, okay, I need you to stop at the liquor store, get this, get that, do this, do that. Here's a 50. It totally happens all the time. It's definitely something that, we do. And I mean, we as in people, as in underage people who would be trying to score. You need someone of age, usually who can drive, who would be willing to do that for you. And maybe Candace had done that for him in the past. Maybe when they were more, closer and spending more time together. Maybe Candace had made those types of runs for him or with him before. And, yes, certainly this time she just kind of brought Summer along so it wouldn't be as awkward when they, when she showed up to pick him up to go and do those things and get those things. And then and we can also tie in grandma maybe being a part. It's like, oh, can you go get this prescription filled? Okay, yeah, I'll take you to the hospital early in the morning, tell them your knee is acting up again. They're going to write you a prescription and Hunter's going to give you an extra $50 for that, or what, oh, excuse me. Someone's going to give you an extra little bit of money for that, for example. That's something that's possible as well. And the reason also too I say that is from his own words when Macbeth says at the end of his interview, at the end, he just can't wait to get out of the car and just beeline to the house. He doesn't talk to anyone. And he's like, I wasn't paying attention. I don't know I don't even know actually at this point what, state anyone was in. All I remember is that I stopped my mom from, from asking too many questions at the door. And I just wanted to go home and call my girlfriend because that was the whole point. That's what he said. That was the whole point. And it's like,
yeah, and it's quite interesting that he gets home, then he calls his girlfriend. It's like, I'm with my girlfriend. Don't get the wrong idea here, kind of thing. And then also, Ellie says she wanted to see some, and Candace said, no, you can't, like literally stopped her, right?
Right.
The other thing that's quite interesting to think about is if you've got this kind of strategic idea where you say, I want to party, to use the parlance, I want to party with this teenager, where can we kind of have fun but also kind of get rid of Summer? Like we need Summer to kind of run off, right? So it's a swimming hole, because if you think about it, I don't think Candace really swam, right? I don't really get the sense that Candace swam. I don't get the sense that Grandma swam, and even Macbeth didn't seem like he was kind of an Olympic swimmer. He was like, he'd maybe wade in there. The other thing that I think is quite interesting is when Candace shoots the TikTok video, Summer's quite far into the water already. Summer's not kind of splashing around the periphery. She's quite deep into that river, right? And Macbeth is sort of wading in, but he's already some distance away from her. And then he kind of kicks the water. You kind of get the sense that he's not particularly interested in swimming. And in his story to Chris McDonough, he says, he had his clothes on, he had his shirt on. He was on land with Candace when Summer went under the water. So he wasn't even in the water when that happened. No. Yeah. So the other thing is, what was the other thing? When I looked at the satellite photo, it's kind of quite weird. When I looked at a Google satellite photo, Google image of Warrior Path Park, obviously it's a dated image, but it's nevertheless, what it shows is how the muddy bank, so you've got the bank of the river, which is kind of like the shoreline, but then there's like a section that's kind of muddy that is below the water, but it's kind of muddy. And then there's a sudden drop off.
Right.
And that's the terrain where Summer was last seen when she was alive. Right. So we've got footage of her where it's a last photo where she's not moving. Well, what about the footage we've got where she's last seen alive? Well, where is she? She's walking, she's wading towards this drop off. And what is Candace and Macbeth doing when she's in this terrain? Well, I think they're paying attention to other things, and wasn't that the point? They went there so that Summer would kind of do her own thing. And it's a perfect scenario for a little child who can't swim you remember the words that they actually used was that she was lured by, she was lured away. Well, water can do that. Like if you, a kid at the seaside or something, you can be lured to go further in. And that's what I think took place. While they were distracted, wasn't Summer lured towards this deeper water? And there may be all sorts of reasons to imagine she could go deeper. She could have seen those tree trunks or those branches and thought, I can swim to that tree trunk or branch. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Often when you see something like that, it's like, that's how far I want to go out or whatever. And then you realize, wow, I actually don't have my footing, kind of thing. Okay, let's just read a couple. Yeah.
I'll just add that also we also have to kind of remember that if it was the goal of the day was kind of just to score in whichever, now they've got this prescription finally, they put the prescription in, and it was a very short distance away from that particular location. When they say that they were just kind of killing time, they may have been, killing time and to just wait for that prescription to be filled and then go pick up whatever that was. And, they had already previously made other stops and, got the party kind of started there, sort of thing, with whatever it was that they had already on them and whatever else that they were already doing. But yeah, it is an interesting, it's an interesting thought to think, what exactly were they doing there? I mean, they did use the whole fishing thing. That could have just been not a lie, but that could have just been something that they were going to say. And then they thought to themselves, well, gee, we need to do something with water so that not to raise suspicion with Allison thinking, well, we can't just say, oh, we just drove around and filled prescriptions and just, you know what I mean? We got to sort of stop. And they had Summer had probably heard that, like, well, I thought we were going to be going fishing or something. Oh, gee, we better do something. She wants to go. She wants to do, something. But
if
also,
if you think of the fishing story and the fishing semantics and the fishing narrative, fishing tends to take a while. You don't just fish for 10 minutes.
Right.
It tends to be 1, 2, 3 hours, right? Fishing tends to be a longer deal than swimming. Swim can be quite quick, and it's quite interesting how Candace, I think, says we weren't there much longer than 20 minutes, and she also says the water was filthy. Do you remember she was saying that there was like trash everywhere, and yet when you saw it, it was like it's not perfect, but it looks kind of not bad. So Candace seemed to be saying we didn't swim, we weren't there for long, and I think the opposite is true. I think Summer did swim, and they were there for quite a while. And that's why I think the fishing thing was part of that, was because they were supposed to be there for quite a while. And that's what's also quite interesting, is they came home early. They came home much earlier than I think they were supposed to.
They did, which is
also... Terry says, weird she mentioned the trash. Yvonne says maybe Summer...
Sorry, go ahead.
Yvonne says maybe Summer playfully went under the water and her little swim skirt got caught on one of the branches and she couldn't get free. That's definitely been suggested that could have happened. That could definitely have happened. One's also kind of got to just wonder, what did happen to a swimsuit? Did they find a swimsuit? Was a swimsuit in the laundry? It would just be interesting to know.
Her swimsuit and the little sundress she was wearing as well, and the pillow she was supposedly sitting on.
Beverly says, pillow full of urine from Summer. Some people have been asking what happened to the pillow. Kristen says if something happened at the swimming hole, Macbeth may have alerted Ellie. She would have been waiting for them to get home and wanting to see Summer. So it makes sense if Candace said, no, we have to go.
I got the impression that her son was deliberately trying for her to not see what the situation in the truck, and that he didn't really want to cough up any information regarding that. And there, I have a lot of reasons why I believe that.
Yeah, certified quality says, well, that's not what we're saying. We're not saying that. We're not saying that at all. We're saying that she may have been under the water for a long time and then got in the car and it wasn't clear. She may actually have been alive. It may have been not clear what is going on. It may also be a combination of going under the water for a long time and having some kind of sedative in her system, or even that she went under the water a long time and that she was conscious after that, but then took a sedative and there was some strange effect kind of thing. There is a thing called dry drowning where you can go under the water, get fluid in your lungs, swallow water, and you seem perfectly fine. But then the water is actually inside your lungs to an extent, and you just can't get enough oxygen. That can be a factor as well. Pauline says there's a reason Candace didn't call 911 until after Summer disappeared. Yeah, that's a good point. Teresa says, I believe what took her away happened at the pond. That's what I think as well. Okay, so one of the early theories was that she wasn't taken from home, and the reason was because there were so many dogs. So do you guys remember in the very early days there was this talk that somebody came to the property and took Summer away, and there were some people who thought maybe that did happen, and they thought there were all sorts of sinister things taking place and so on, and then it turned out that there were so many dogs on the property, and then I think Ali said there may have been as many as 20 dogs, and then someone said, well, that's an exaggeration, but some of the dogs had just had a litter. But when you look at that property, and I've actually seen some drone footage, when you look at that property, it's not like just a house somewhere. It's separated from everywhere else. It's like an island, and it's an island populated by dogs and a couple of people. And so what happens when someone approaches there, you would imagine they would approach in a car. You wouldn't easily get to Chalet Wells just walking there. But even if you did walk there, there is a long climb. It's a long walk up to Chalet Wells, and there are dogs dotted all over there. And I think what's quite interesting is when Chris McDonough goes there, how do the dogs respond? Anyway, Bria, what is your experience with dogs, feral and otherwise?
Well, I actually grew up and I loved animals as a kid. I just adored animals. I loved dogs, and my family actually used to breed dogs, and we always had lots of puppies and dogs. I grew up around dogs. And then I had actually a little bit of a unique experience where I moved to Thailand, and I got to experience living with wild dogs, which are completely different from the domestic dogs that I had known. I was born and raised in Canada, and we have dogs as pets. Well, they don't really keep dogs as pets. Their dogs are just, in the streets and just kind of in your community. And I was a professional athlete at the time, and I would have to take 2 runs per day, long distance runs. And
what were you an athlete in?
I actually, I do like a Thai boxing. It's like a type of
Oh, okay.
Thai kickboxing. It's the national sport in Thailand. So I kind of went to the Haven at some point to, you know, to further my career and get as much experience as I could at that point, not being able to do that in Canada at the time. And I would have to, my morning run was 15 kilometers. And then I did an afternoon run of 5 kilometers. And this, you do this every day. So you start your run, and they start, all of the boxers start your run very, very early. You have your runners on, and you got to be, you're out of the house at on the run at 6 p.m. on the dot, no later. And this is for many reasons, but mostly because of the sun. You don't want to be doing this run when the sun is coming out already. You want to get the run over with when you can get back to the yard before the sun is blazing and you're just dying of heat. So you have to get that run out of the way first. When I would be on these runs, I quickly realized that I would be, you're 15 kilometers, right? And as we know, wild dogs run in packs. It's a very a meticulous kind of hierarchy system with dogs, how they take care of her, how they survive in the wild. It's very different. This is not, we're not talking about, you know, Timmy, or, you know, like a lap dog or a regular domestic house dogs. These are very different types of dogs. And this was actually extremely hard at the very beginning. I would have to pass um, territory after territory after territory. And some of the dogs were like kind of more docile. This is at the beginning. You know, they wouldn't really care much. They knew that we were kind of be coming through. And then there were some sections of my run where later on, as I would be doing this run, I'm like, okay, this is coming up. I would know these dogs, and I'd know that, oh, I hope that they don't see me, and I got to try to get out of here. And you know, heavy barking, and they were very rattled up. And there's reasons for that, is because they're very territorial. Dogs don't just let anybody just come through their territory. And what I noticed was I'm not really alone at the beginning. I was running with the team, and so the dogs had kind of known them. They were okay with them. It's like they could smell me a mile away, and they can. And like, they know I'm coming, you know, they don't know me. They don't trust me. They don't know me. They know that this is an intruder. This is an intruder. And it's like literally a mile away, and they'd be, you know, lined up waiting. And I used to struggle so hard trying to keep up to the pack and try to keep up with my pack, with my, with other people, so I wouldn't be singled out and alone. And I had several scenarios while I was living there where I was experiencing this, specifically also into the neighborhood that I tried to become a part of. Well, the first thing I needed to do, I mean, I would be getting like attacked, and what the dogs do is, well, they have strategy, but basically they smell you from a mile away. They know that you're there. You don't see them. And a stronger member of the pack will kind of run ahead of the other pack in front of you, and then you'll be basically circled. The other ones will come from behind, and they circle you in. That's just what they do. I had several incidences like this. I purchased it's actually like a taser, just to make the noise, try to scare them away. I tried to I needed protection when I was alone. I was living there alone. And but the minimum thing I would try to do was at least just try to make friends with the dogs, you know, in my neighborhood. So when I had to go home, and it's kind of almost like a courting period. It goes very slow. They have to get to know you. They have to get to know you so that they can be okay. Like, okay, she's okay here. We know her, which includes maybe giving food, trying to become friendly, letting them know that you're not a threat. They need to get used to you. And so that was some of the experiences that I had there. And I quickly realized that, you know, these dogs are they operate in a completely different way. These are wild dogs. So I'm going to just start then by asking the chat a question. So I have a question for everybody. Do you think that they are diurnal or nocturnal? What do you think? They're an animal. Are dogs diurnal, meaning they're awake during the day, or are they naturally nocturnal, meaning they are awake at night? What do you guys think? and then we'll get back to you guys. So if you guys,
what do you guys say?
Yeah, what do you guys say? Let's say a 1 for diurnal, that dogs are awake during the day. They like to be up during the day. And a 2 if you think that dogs are nocturnal, that they prefer to be up at night.
Endo says nocturnal, at least my dog.
Okay, 1 diurnal. All right.
2.
Okay. All right.
Quite a few 1s.
All right. Okay, quite a few 1s, which I did kind of expect. And I hope you guys forgive me for this, because I'm going to throw you a curveball. But actually, dogs are neither. They are neither diurnal or nocturnal. They're actually crepuscular animals. And what that means is that dogs prefer to be awake in the wee hours of morning or the wee hours of night, essentially dusk or dawn, which is essentially in twilight. And that's just an interesting point of reference just to start off with. One point
that
to
is
make
interesting.
It is very interesting. And also that domestic dogs can easily become domesticated, as we've all know. They can become domesticated, and dogs are actually very they're very adaptive animals. And so what a domesticated dog will easily be able to do is adopt the habits, yes, of their owners, of their master. That's what they'll do. So if you're up all night, your dog might be up all night with you. Possibly, it's possible. If you are,
well, my dog is like that.
Yeah,
I'm often awake through the night, and then my dog is as well.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, they adapt. Dogs are so adaptive creatures, and the bond between man and dog, they will often, almost always, adopt the kind of regular everyday
well, I must say my dog is definitely he seems to want to go outside for a toilet break at dawn. That seems to be like his time, right?
Yeah.
And he also wants to go out, but I think what it is he realizes when the sun's coming up, I think it's time now that you get up, because I want to go out. I've got to go out now. It's like, but also by the same token, the sun's going down now. I want to go for a walk before the day is done, kind of thing. But I just want to touch on something. Now, he definitely gets more like, are we going for a walk or not, when it's starting to get late in the day. I don't know if everyone's dog's the same. But I think the reason, I don't think it's an accident that there were so many dogs at Chalet Wells. I don't think it was just like, oh, I think it was by design. I think the dogs were like a cheap alarm system, right? The dogs were meant to be like a long distance, like someone's coming, okay, put all this stuff away, right?
That's
you know what
right.
I mean? Especially someone's coming up on foot. So it's kind of an alarm system. Yeah. And I think there was another kind of alarm system as well. I think the basement bedroom scenario was a kind of somebody, I can't remember who it was, but somebody once described, when they saw the inside of Chalet Wells, they said, well, that looks to me like a meth lab. And I thought that's quite an interesting observation. But you can take it a bit further. Some of those windows were closed up. They were like, I can't remember what it was. Was it garbage bags in front of them or boarded up in some way? But definitely some of those basement windows, Chris McDunn actually commented on that.
Yeah, it looks like tin foil.
Yeah. What's the other thing? And then the other thing is the fact that this house is so far from everywhere. It's like it's like off the beaten track, means it's quite a good place for certain kinds of activity, because it's not, you're not got neighbors. You look down on everyone else. You don't have like a neighbor that can like look into your garden, and so it's quite a remote location if you're up to mischief, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is what the dogs were part of, is part of protecting the mischief.
Yeah, I agree. And also too, like you think of the type of dogs that they had. I mean, it's not like they had a whole bunch of like toy poodles or something. I mean, they had wild dogs, kind of maybe like a mixed breed type of dog, or maybe some type of an American Staffordshire type of mix going on. And these point is, these are big dogs. These are tough dogs. These are dogs that you would want to keep around to warn off any unwanted people coming on your property. That's essentially what they were used for. Otherwise, why have them around at all? It would make no sense. I think that they like to have those types of dogs around because it intimidated people, and they felt safe with them to a certain extent. And there's also a side where they could have given some type of companionship as well to their children and what have you. And I think that, like you said, it was strategic. I would have to agree. There's a reason why those dogs are there.
Those dogs aren't there anymore. They've actually been apparently adopted. Yeah. Apparently, within in recent days, Summer's favorite dog, Yucky, has been also adopted, I think. And I can't remember how many dogs, if it was 7 or whatever, but all of them have been adopted except 2 that have still needed to be neutered or something. So things have been kind of changing there. Someone makes a good point. Mel Stiller says, when Chris visited the property, Candace was with him. Perhaps that's why the dogs didn't make a big fuss. I think that's a good point. I did notice that. I noticed that the dogs didn't go crazy, but he drove up there, and it was also Candace was sort of standing there when he was there. But I must say, in a way, I can't remember if did the dogs not bark at all.
Oh, they barked. They barked a lot.
Yeah.
They barked a lot. They made a lot of noise. Yep. As they would, as they always do. And even Ali had said too that they always bark when she goes, whether you know them or not, they bark. It takes them a minute to kind of settle down. Okay, we know you, we're okay. But they always bark. That's what they're supposed to do. That's exactly their job.
I think if you've got a camera recording them, then Murphy's Law will kick in and they won't bark. Yeah, so I don't know, one would have to go back to that video and watch, but I can't imagine there's not a single bark.
Lots of barking.
Jane's World 2 says, I think dogs were no more than convenient byproduct, an alarm system of neglecting to have, yeah. Jean Carris, Ellie always brought them food. They didn't get fed regularly like they should have, just like the kids. Yvonne says one dog actually growled at Chris McDonough on camera. Yvonne's always got great comments, and she's always so great attention to detail. Bog Central. Okay. Something that I think is part and parcel of all of this is, it's something that I've put in a lot of my videos, is that how does that thing go? Sorry, I'm a little bit sleepy. No one deceives like an addict, right? And that is, I think, definitely something that has made this case a lot harder than it otherwise would be, is you dealing with people who are substance abusers are like the world's best liars, because it's a lifestyle. They lie as part of their everyday life. it's second nature, and they not only, I'm not saying they necessarily yeah, sometimes it's not that they good liars, but that the fact that if they lie about everything just makes it so hard to kind of figure out where does the truth even start. Now, in the Casey Anthony case, there was so much lying going on that it was like, you know, in a normal case, you kind of go, oh, you lied, we caught you out, you're guilty. In the Casey Anthony case, it was like, well, there's so many lies, it's not really a big deal. This is just par for the course, it doesn't really mean anything. And that's just like, wow, what do you do with this? And in a weird way, it's kind of been the same thing with Summer Wells. It's like there's so many lies going on. Does it really mean anything? And it's tempting to say that it doesn't mean anything. In fact, somebody made the comment that in Don's letter, where he starts off saying, addressing Summer in the first person, saying, we looked for you and whatever, but he addresses Summer as you. And then at the end of the letter, he addresses her almost in the third person, saying, if God finds her. And that is a very interesting inconsistency, just as using the present and past tense shows you haven't really decided in your mind how you're going to deal with this, how you're going to represent this reality. So in the same way, were you saying, Summer, I'm going to talk to you directly because I believe you're alive, and then you talk to her indirectly, suggests, have you really decided ultimately, you know, what you believe, kind of thing, you know, or how you're going to kind of talk about that. But something that I think is, besides the substance abuse, is there's a very high level of what's the word? I think the best word is just excess. There's an excess of a lot going on, excessive mendacity, but just excessive. It's not like dysfunction on a normal scale. It's really, really excessive. And I don't mean to be mean, but when you saw that interview with Chris McDonough on the porch, there's some people sitting there that can barely fit into their clothing. And that person then lets Macbeth go to the swimming hole. And you know what I mean? That speaks about standards in terms of excess. And I don't know whether those standards are healthy. And in standards where there's excess, including in terms of, just think about it, all the dogs that are there, how many kids they've got, the substance abuse in terms of excess, the long history of people disappearing and children going through this sort of hamster wheel of what's the word? Not trauma. I suppose trauma is the word, but
neglect.
It's all due to it's all due to excess, and this excess manifests as excessive neglect. That's why the Wells kids aren't there anymore. And it's quite interesting that Don seems to be blaming YouTube for the kids being taken away. Is that really the reason? It's also interesting how we haven't really heard anything from the folks doing the church vigil. What has happened to them? Has the penny dropped for them, or have they been told they can't pray about it anymore? Remember, they were going to like pray for Summer until she comes home. Well, that stopped at some point. But I just want to come back to this theme of excess. Within that theme of excess, it's kind of inevitable that something's eventually going to happen. And it's within this excess, whatever you want to call it, of intoxication, substance abuse. If an accident happens, is it really an accident, or is it an accident waiting to happen? And you know, it's like that whole context of excess means things are not healthy, they're not functional.
Stable.
And so if something does eventually happen, it feels like it's inevitable. Anyway, Teresa says both Don and Candace are experts in a certain way. Axie says everybody's fault but his own. Okay. Hey, Jealousy says don't drink. Yeah. So I wonder whether we're going to get a statement from law enforcement, whether they're going to say anything. Just that the case is still ongoing. Let's just have a look whether anything has come up. 1 year missing, the search for Summer Wells. Yeah, I don't really see anything from law enforcement yet. Maybe the authorities will still say something. Oh, it says here prayer vigils to take place on anniversary. Okay. So I just want to wrap up by asking the question, why do you think this case resonated so much? Because I think there are a lot of families like the Wells family. There are a lot of kids that go missing. In fact, there was a little girl called Harmony Montgomery that disappeared, I think, 3 years ago. And nobody even seemed to know that she'd been missing for the first 2 of the 3 years. Why didn't that case really make the mainstream media or become high profile? I wonder whether her name, Summer Wells, there's just something very catchy about it. And, you know, people saying a year without summer, isn't that where we felt we were last year with the coronavirus?
I do think timing had something to do with that as well. The timing, it happened, you know, in the middle of summer, and then it was like summer's almost over, and then you know, and it was catchy in that way, and it did resonate with
Summer's
people.
missing, yeah,
right,
and also her surname Wells. It's like Summer Well, you know, you know what I mean. It's like healthy, happy summer, and the just kind of the play on the sort of American psychology of an unhappy summer, you know, a summer that vanishes, a summer that is missing, a summer that disappears. And you know what I mean? Although you're reading about a little girl, in a way, you keep seeing the words "summer's missing," but it's within the context of this rural. Somebody said, you know, it actually looked quite idyllic from the outside. It looked like this wonderful place where, you know, you could, as a kid, you could run around and play in the stream and play Tarzan in the trees, and, you know, maybe childhoods that many of us experienced as young kids before TikTok you know, like a young kid now would go to a river and play TikTok kind of thing.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, and they
whereas
had
in our time,
grid kind of, you know, it seemed like kind of like a, you know, riding dirt bikes and puppies and being able to, you know, just out in nature. They describe summer as just, you know, loving nature, loving to be outdoors. All of the kids love to be outdoors, and you could think, and I think maybe even earlier on, very early on, people maybe did think that at the very beginning, you know, that they kind of provided this kind of, you know, exceptional almost type of a lifestyle for their kids.
Yeah, and there was a little bit of a little house on the prairie aspect to it. I must say, I'm not from America, and when I looked at that, I was like, wow, Tennessee actually looks quite nice. I think I must visit. And when I started researching it, it was like, wow, this is Davy Crockett country, you know. And there's something really charming about it, but then it had this sort of dark undertone to it. Teresa says, also a little boy named Michael went missing shortly after summer. Nothing was made of that disappearance. Sad. Yvonne Phillips says, social media, cute kid, crazy family behavior, perfect storm. I think it's inevitable. You have some cases that are like, how can I put it? There's a piece of the puzzle that's missing and it just remains missing. And then that creates this compelling, it's a mystery. People are interested in that. If you look at even the Rust shooting, there's this constant thing of we just don't know, like, somebody says something, but there's like the investigation just doesn't conclude, and there's just not closure. You know what I mean? And this persistent pursuit of justice that seems like it keeps kind of escaping your grasp, that makes very compelling true crime. You had that also with Gabby Petito. You have that with Laurie Vella, where all of these cases, if you take Laurie Vella, Suzanne Morphew, Summer Wells, Gabby Petito, can you say in any of those cases we've kind of had a sense of justice being done, And I think that is kind of what guarantees a case to be high profile, is where you have quite a lot of information, but that last piece of the puzzle, probably not the last piece, but the last 10 pieces of the puzzle, you just can't get them. And that's what's so frustrating. Even with Gabby Petito, the Petitos are taking the Laundries to court because they feel that they must know something. I don't know if they do, but it's that same feeling of this can't be it. We need more. We need more information. We need closure here. And that's what makes the Summer Wells case so one of the weirdest cases I've ever dealt with, where it seemed so obvious, and yet it seems to have defeated the authorities.
Yes. I also do wonder, not to open this can of worms, but I mean, I'm thinking of some of the reasons why maybe this case was so interesting to people and why it got a lot of attention and I'm wondering if that's not because of other family members coming forward with certain particular information pretty early on, and kind of just opening the floodgates to a lot of those discussions. That could maybe have something to do with it as well.
Yeah, I think things like substance abuse is a common theme. It's becoming a more and more common theme. I've definitely got, I can tell you stories about it, not so much in terms of my life, but in terms of some people I know. And I think in a way, Don, Candace, Summer, Grandma, they were kind of caricatures in a way where it was almost safe to look into this, although it's a true story, it almost felt like this fiction in a way. These fictional characters, Ellie, Macbeth, Grandma, that you got to know quite well in a way. And you know what I'm saying? And so you could sort of see into what was going on there, but you also felt like it was going to be sorted out. And the horror of this story is that something like this happens and it's still unresolved. That's the horror of it.
That is the horror of it, or that you possibly think that people are hiding something or not being forthcoming, and you start to see those holes and those kind of cracks in stories, and it leaves a lot of questions for people. People wonder,
Yeah. I think I'm going to have to sign off. Bria, it's been great having you on. At some point, I think we were over 200 folks in chat, which my channel's taken a bit of a hammering. So well done for that. Um, yeah, so I don't think we're going to go over 2.5 hours. But yeah, I've actually been wanting to have you on, just you, Bria, for quite a while. I wasn't sure whether to do it with Van Gogh, but I think this is definitely a good intro. So folks, you've gotten to know Bria, and I must say, when I listened to a recording you did when it was just your voice, I was like, this is ASMR. Really, like.
I feel the same way about you sometimes.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, in a way, I just, yeah, very soothing, very, something very comforting.
Oh, that's good to
Yeah.
hear.
Yes.
Yeah, well, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's the South African accent that just touches on those ASMR things. But definitely from my perspective, just when you were talking, I was like, wow, it's definitely ASMR is kicking in. Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Oh, that's
Anyway,
sweet.
Zircon says, fantastic live. Thanks so much. Teresa says, good job, Nick and Bria. Beverly Lawyer says, thanks, all Bria and Rocket. Okay. Jean Karras has been a great live. I'd stay all day. Sylvia Rogier says, thank you. Teresa says, you are a very gentle soul, Nick. Thanks a lot. So I'm thinking of having Bria back on a Van Gogh letters when we deal with him writing in French. I must say, often when I deal with the Van Gogh letters, when he refers to French names, I'm like, Bria, I need you. I don't know if you guys know Bria. You were born in Canada, right?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Canada, and I traveled a lot, and I ended up settling down. I currently live in Bordeaux in the south of France.
And I've kind of been traveling through France the last few days, watching the Dauphiné Libéré, the Criterium du Dauphiné. And it's a Tour de France like in about 2.5 weeks. Can't wait for that. Right now I'm watching the Tour of Switzerland, but I think it was the third last day of the Criterium du Dauphiné, and this French dude, did you watch it?
Are you talking about when you mean when they had a little bit of a...
No, there was a breakaway, and this French guy, I think he was 24. Oh. He saw them looking at each other, and then he just broke away. And I thought, right, what a great move that was. I kind of wanted to talk to you about it, but now we can. It was just such a great movie. He saw them look at each other, and he shot through them, and then they just couldn't catch him. And it was a brilliant win. I thought it was really, really good. Yeah.
Timing is everything, and seizing the moment.
So just because I know you're a sports person, Bria, when I was at university, I was a pretty good triathlete. I was in the top 5 or 6 in South Africa in my age group. And they allowed us in those days to do ordinary cycle races with triathlon bars. And because we were the fittest guys, we would often lead the cycle races. So all the other cyclists would ride behind us, and we'd be like, well, we need to train anyway. We'll take the front and we'll do the work, kind of thing. And I remember at the end of this one race, it was like me and 3 or 4 other guys, and we were right at the end, and we were right in front of everybody. And it was now like, there's the finishing line. And it was like, as I say, I think there were about 4 of us, and it was like I was in front, so I was like slowing down, like, I'm not gonna ride to the end now. Let's see what we're gonna do. And there was a sprinter with us, a proper cyclist, a proper sprinter, and he was purposely trying to slow us down to almost walking pace so that he could slow us down and then sprint off, right? and I really should have just continued riding hard, kind of thing. Anyway, so here are 3 or 4 of us looking at each other, and we're going really walking pace. And the guy turns to me and he says, in Afrikaans, he says, "So, what are you studying?" Meaning, like, what are you studying at university? And it's like this super tense moment. It's like, it's like the finishing line is like 200-300 meters away. It's like super tense. We're like looking at each other, and he looks at me and he says, "So, what are you studying?" And like something just like clicks in my brain, and I'm like, economics. And he managed to like break that tension, so that, like, like I've got my adrenaline and everything. And the moment I said that, he jumped, and he jumped, and he won the race. So he totally outsmarted me, and I was like, So in other words, when he asked him that question, I should have just ignored him. In fact, I should have, from then, I should have actually kicked away. But what he did that to take my mind off what was happening for a split second, and that's exactly what he achieved. And I've never forgotten that. I thought that was a slimy move, but it worked.
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy. I know that too. Like, even in sports psychology, they do teach you how to, especially in boxing, it is, there's a lot of psychology and trying to, kind of like break your opponent even before the fight starts. Like, we all know Muhammad Ali was one of the first people to kind of do this. He used to drive to he would be, they'd have this big professional fight lined up. It would be months and months in advance. They're both training for it. He used to almost stalk his opponents. He'd show up here, show up there. He even would show up, in front of their house, and he would, making these rhymes and riddles, and he just would get into deep into the psyche of his. That was a strategy that he would use to try to win his fights, is to try to like plant a seed deep into the mind of opponents. And some people do that. Some people will try to strategize like that and break a concentration, and then use that moment and just kind of go in for the win. Yeah.
Do you know about it's called Iron Wars? It's a battle between world Ironman two Ironman champions. But I mean, these are like super strong guys mentally and physically. Dave Scott and Mark Allen. And they ended up, Mark Allen hadn't won an Ironman race, and then he went to the World Championship, which is in Kona. And the entire Ironman race, these guys were head-to-head for like 8 hours, right? 8 hours long, and it's like a classic battle where they were pushing insane speeds, but they were like head-to-head for like virtually this entire Ironman race. And the thing that was eventually the breakthrough was where I think Dave Scott reached for a cup of water or something, like on one of the very last watering points. And Mark Allen, at that moment that Dave went for it, he kicked. So he was like, I'm not going to go for the water. And then he kicked. And then that was it. Dave couldn't catch him. And that was also just, it was like two extremely strong athletes, and also trying to outpsych one another. And then that was the one weakness that the one could find in terms of the other one. So it's a really, you can actually watch it on YouTube. I think they call it Iron Wars, but it's also, if you just Google Mark Allen, Dave Scott, it's incredible to watch. It's really quite amazing.
There's somebody in chat from my hometown. I can't believe it.
Oh, really?
I can't believe it. Yeah, that's it.
Nanaimo.
Yeah, Nanaimo.
Nanaimo, okay.
Yeah. That's
well, Magic Dragonfly, I think you guys can go out for coffee.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a good note to end this on. So I don't know if you guys want to exchange email addresses, or are you on Instagram, Bria?
Yeah.
maybe you should just type your Instagram there and you guys can link up. Magic Dragonfly, are you on Instagram?
It's just my regular name. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Bria, thanks a lot for making it.
Thank you so
good
much
chat.
for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate just being here with all of you guys and discussing this case. You know, it's all been in our hearts and on our minds, and yeah, I just really wanted to say thank you so much for all of your guys' time, for being here with us, just taking the time for all of us to get together once again and continue the discussion, continue the narrative. I mean, there's always so much more to be said. There's so many more discussions to be had, but I'm glad that we were able to kind of come together on this very, very sad 1-year anniversary and kind of remember and kind of, you know, think again about some of the things that we had previously thought about. And this case really has gotten, has taken so many turns and kind of got way off down into the ditch here or there. And I just wanted to say that I think it's just really, which is what I love about this community, and I really love about Nick and TCRS, we just stick to the facts and we go back to the beginning. And as much as we hate to admit it, that, you know, so it's often not the most spectacular series of events that are the truth, but often the most simplest answer. And I just hope that we were able to simplify things and kind of what Nick says, you know, take us out of the murk and the fog of everything and just kind of stick to some of the things that we know. And unfortunately, we don't know much. We don't know much, but we're all trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together to get to the knowing. And we all are here because we want to see justice for Summer Wells. We want to see that she's found and that we can have a little bit of, I guess, some type of, maybe not closure, but maybe understanding at least. And I hope that we were able to help with that today, or in future discussions. And thank you just so much for all of your time. It was just a pleasure to be here with everyone. And thank you.
It's very long overdue, and I've just really appreciated your passion and your interest. I mean, you need that in a case like this. You need to care and to pay attention. And yeah, the Summer Wells case is definitely one that touched, I think, all of us over the past year. You know, and so it's important to honor these anniversaries.
Yeah, it is. It is. It is.
Okay. A lot of people saying thank you, and Teresa says please have her again soon. So we will, and we'll look out for another opportunity. Tricia says, if Grandma was sleeping, anything could have taken place. Okay. Anyway, we'll leave it at that. Take care. All the best. And I think where you are, it's almost 10 o'clock at night. Eh?
Yep. Yep. Just
have
about.
A good sleep.
Thank you so much. You too, Nick. I hope you're able to have a good sleep as well. Take care. And
thanks a lot. I'm in a normal pattern at least, so that's good. So it is my sleepy time. Yeah.
That's good.
Okay, all the best. Okay.
You
Take
too.
care.
Bye
Cheers,
for now,
guys.
everyone.
Cheers, chat.
Take care, guys. Bye for now.